the Party Secretary General. We have a written document, a partial account of our experience. I can't say full account because, just like you observed, an election per se is not an event. Even when polling day was essentially 14th for the President and members of Parliament, violations were occasioned on polling day, but they continue to be occasioned and visited on our people even as we speak. Abductions still go on and all manner of violations. So we are making an account of some of what we were able to capture in the immediacy. On another event and occasion, probably we are going to make a record that, given a chance, we would probably bring to Parliament for the record of the country and the posterity, so that future generations can avoid the kind of avoidable mistakes committed in the name of politics and power, Madam Chair. So can I humbly invite Mr. Lewis, David Lewis, to proceed. He'll be assisted by our legal counsel to make our case before this honorable committee, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary General of the National Unity Platform. And social killings, abductions, torture, and enforced disappearances. These illegal actions, Madam Chair, deliberately and selectively targeted NUP candidates and supporters across the country, thereby undermining the party's effective participation in the electoral process that culminated into the 14th January elections. The unprovoked violence that Uganda's security forces perpetrated against members and supporters of NUP left over 60 people dead, those who are recorded, who the government admitted, hundreds injured, and thousands arrested unfairly, abducted, or disappeared across the country. To date, the party continues to receive reports of similar human rights violations against its people who associate with it, particularly its members and journalists who cover its activities. This brief statement highlights some of the human rights violations suffered by members and supporters of NUP and the wider public at the hands of national security forces. The violations which occurred before, during, and after the elections are not limited to excessive use of force, extrajudicial killings, and other things that I've talked about, but it includes illegal detention, torture, abductions, and such other heinous violations. Suffice to note that whereas the perpetrators of these violations are known, they have not been held accountable for their actions, but have instead attracted praise from General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who actually has come up to appreciate them several times. The National Unity Platform calls for an end to these acts of impunity, and now I hereby give a summary of the violations that took place. It was the brutal arrest of Honorable Kyagulanyi on nomination day. Madam Chair, you will note that the National Unity Platform, even before we became a political party as People Power, we were facing very, very many violations, and many people died even before we became NUP. But because this committee is concerned with the electoral period, that is why we've limited it to the period after beginning with nominations. On 3rd November 2020, just after he had filed his presidential nomination papers with the Electoral Commission in Chambogo, NUP Party President and flag bearer Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was accosted by security operatives who dragged him out of his vehicle, arrested, detained, and tortured him for several hours. Uganda's security agencies provided no legitimate explanation for this brutal treatment of Honorable Kyagulanyi, who had just been nominated and was meant to launch our party manifesto that afternoon, which was blocked. Attempted murder, and that's the second one, of Honorable Kyagulanyi and his associates on 1st December 2020. We are noting here that our party president and his campaign team survived several attempts at their lives, but the most shocking of them happened on 1st December when the vehicle in which he was traveling in with NUP's youth leader, Honorable Francis Zake, was sprayed with bullets by military officers as he attempted to travel to a campaign meeting. The military officers opened fire onto the vehicle that shattered its windscreen and flattened its tires. The bullet narrowly missed Honorable Kyagulanyi, Honorable Zake, and their driver. The third one is systematic violence and excessive use of force against a person of our party president and his supporters during the presidential campaigns. RDCs and military officers conducted systematic violence against our president and the campaign team on almost all occasions where he held or attempted to hold presidential campaign activities. As a result, our party president was prevented from holding or concluding more than 80% of his approved campaign meetings and was blocked from reaching or entering more than 30% of the districts where he was supposed to campaign from. We already indicated the number of assassination attempts he survived, but several of our supporters were not as lucky. The unmitigated use of tear gas, sound bombs, and live bullets caused injuries to a significant number of our campaign team members and supporters, many of whom lost limbs and life in the process. These circumstances eventually compelled Honorable Kyagulanyi to campaign while donning a bulletproof vest and ballistic helmet, as you all saw. A detailed narration of this violence is contained. Madam Chair, we have attached a witness account of our legal officer, Asasi Marvin, to the documents we've submitted, which gives a day-to-day account of the campaign trail and what was going on in each of those campaigns. The fourth issue, deadly use of force on peaceful protesters following the arrest of Honorable Kyagulanyi during a campaign meeting. This committee is aware that on the 18th of November, our party president, Honorable Kyagulanyi, was arrested in the middle of a campaign meeting in Luka district on allegations that he had violated COVID-19 regulations, which in our view were being selectively applied to NUP and not to the government, to NRM or any other person, except ourselves and other opposition parties. Peaceful protests immediately broke out nationwide as citizens demanded for his release, but these were brutally quelled by police and the military in such a brutal manner. In less than 2 days, over 54 people had been shot dead, according to the state, but independent sources put the number of deaths at over 100. No one has ever been held accountable for this disproportionate use of force against unarmed and peaceful civilians. Number 5, murder of NUP supporters during the electoral process. On several occasions during the 2021 electoral process, many members and supporters of NUP were murdered by security forces led by police and the military. For instance, on the 27th of December, Honorable Kyagulanyi's bodyguard, Francis Senteza Kalibala, was murdered when a military truck deliberately ran over him at Busega roundabout on the outskirts of Kampala as Honorable Kyagulanyi's team rushed another injured journalist, Ashraf Kasirye, to hospital. According to reports and witness accounts, Mr. Senteza was killed while attempting to rush the aid of David Kaoya, another member who was being battered by the military and police officers. Madam Chair, Chairperson, we have attached to the documents a list showing all our members who have disappeared, but also has 19 people who died, who were killed by security agencies during the campaign period. The other aspect is arrest, detention, and torture of Honorable Kyagulanyi's entire campaign team. On 30th December, while traveling to Kalangala district for a campaign meeting, our party president and his campaign team were intercepted and arrested in Chigere Chanjovu forest in Kalangala district. Honorable Kyagulanyi was airlifted back to Kampala, but the rest of the entire campaign team, which had over 100 people, were detained in various facilities, including police cells and military barracks. They were detained without trial for over 4 days before they were eventually arraigned before a military court. During the court proceedings, many of them, including Kampala Lukman, who is our camera person, Chuma, Tege, and others, reported that they had been tortured and bore physical torture marks. Some of the others, about 9 of them, were detained at Kasagajirwa military barracks in Masaka, and really the violations committed on them were incredible. Forced to put off their clothes while pictures of them were being taken, forced to frog march every morning, and other forms of interrogation that they have reported to us. Although some of these people were eventually released, a total of over 30 are still detained without trial at Chitalia on allegations that they are found in possession of live ammunition, an offense which the state claims they committed on 3rd of January, 5 days after they had been arrested. Madam Chairperson, our people who are detained at Chitalia, the court records show that they committed an offense in January when they were actually already under military detention. On the morning of 6th January, as he traveled with a new campaign team from his home in Margaret to Namisindwa district, police and the military also cut off Honorable Kyagulanyi at a roadblock which they had mounted at Seziwa. The officers ordered his team to turn around and head back to Kampala. As they were turning, security officers seized the vehicle in which the journalists had been covering him and confiscated it, or they towed it to Kayunga police station and confiscated other items which were in the car. And Honorable Kyagulanyi was forced to literally travel alone to the campaign meeting. There are several of our cars, of our vehicles which we are using, which were handled in this similar manner, including the ones which were in Kalangala, and the police had to break into them, took away all several things that were there, including phones and other gadgets. And of course, we believe that is a violation of human rights broadly. As if that was not enough, on 7th January, as Honorable Kyagulanyi traveled with another campaign team of 17 people, they were also arrested without reason at Kakoli village in Budaka district and detained. And we have put the names of those people. The other aspect is brutal crackdown on journalists covering Honorable Kyagulanyi's campaign. Several journalists, including BBS TV's Sesanga Bate, Bukede TV's David Tamale, Ghetto TV's Ashraf Kasile, Pal FM's at Singular Jonan, and others who covered our campaign were brutalized by security officers without cause. During the 18th November arrest, for example, Ghetto journalist Ashraf was left unconscious after being pepper sprayed by police officers who prevented him from recording the arrest of Honorable Kyagulanyi. On 27th of December, the same journalist was shot in the head by Greater Masaka Regional Police Office Commander ASP Enoch Abaine as Honorable Kyagulanyi traveled to a campaign meeting. During the same incident, the ASP Abaine also shot NTV journalist Ali Mifule and stated that the journalist will be considered as collateral damage. Ashraf Kasile has been bedridden since then, and if you read further, we talk about how many other journalists were attacked during this campaign. The other one is conscription of civic space, constriction of civic space. The 2021 general election also saw a reduction in civic space with the increasing direct interference in the work of civil society organizations. For instance, bank accounts of Uganda National NGOs, Forum and Uganda Women's Network were frozen on the orders of Financial Intelligence Authority. The arbitrary order clearly indicates how state institutions were used during the 2021 election process, and this undermined democracy, the rule of law, and certainly human rights. The other element is arbitrary arrest and detention of human rights defenders, and we give examples of our own human rights officer who was arrested together with lawyer Nicholas Opio and others. Denial of access to radio stations and restriction on freedom of expression and information. On several occasions during the election process, Honorable Kyagulanyi was denied access to various radio stations, TV stations, and other media houses across the country, including in Lira, Mbale, and Moroto, among others. In Hoima, he was pulled out of a radio station, and we give further details to that. We further talk about polling day human rights violations, which included destruction and imprisonment of our agents and supervisors across the country. Madam Chairperson, very, very many of our polling agents were arrested illegally across the country, in hundreds. Even after the election, our polling agents and supervisors were arrested and the DRR forms taken out from them by security agencies. The other element related to freedom of expression and media access is a government shutdown of social media platforms. On election day, eve of 13th January, Uganda Communications Commission directed all internet providers to immediately suspend access and use of social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, etc. And up to now, Facebook is still blocked. As you know, Madam Chair, in this country, you cannot access it without VPN. The other element is a raid and siege of NUP headquarters by security forces immediately after the elections. Security raided and besieged our offices found on Old Chila Road in Kamocha, and for over 28 days we could not access our party offices. Military occupation of Honorable Kyagulanyi's home also was a post-election event. On 14th of January, security forces invaded and cut off Honorable Kyagulanyi's home, effectively putting him under house arrest, and Honorable Kyagulanyi's private guards and domestic staff were severely beaten and forced to leave the home. For 11 days, he was detained at his home with his wife and an 18-month-old infant who is a niece, surrounded by hundreds of police and military officers carrying heavy weapons. On 18th of January, when Honorable Francis Zake attempted to visit him at his home, he was viciously assaulted by the security forces to the point of being rushed to the hospital, and he is currently receiving specialized treatment in the United States. Post-election abduction. This was pre- and post-election abduction of NUP supporters and citizens. Madam Chair, this is something that has caught the attention of the world. From the 18th of November, thousands of Ugandan citizens have been abducted by the state, and security forces have largely used the Toyota Hiace vehicles, commonly known as drones. Many of the victims of these abductions have been taken and tortured, and majority of them have been secretly arraigned before military courts and remanded to government prisons, where they remain to date without trial. What happens, and maybe at another time, Madam Chair, I would request that this committee invites some of these victims of these violations to give these accounts of how they've been treated in military detention. Because when they are taken, even some people randomly picked from towns or wherever, they are forced to put on a red beret, a picture of them taken, then they are charged with possession, unlawful possession of military stores, taken to military courts without lawyers, without family members, in total violation of Article 23, Article 28 of the Constitution of this country. And many of these people are still languishing in detention centers. Many of them are at Kitalia by their parents or relatives who do not know that they are actually at Kitalia. Violation of political prisoners' human rights. A number of our supporters detained in the circumstances highlighted above have been subjected to torturous, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment and punishment contrary to Article 24 of our Constitution. Information coming from most of these detainees indicates that their rights, even as prisoners, leave alone the fact that they are there illegally, but their rights as prisoners are not respected. And many of these are tortured from detention centers, which is illegal and unconstitutional and a violation of their rights. At Kitalia, for example, our comrades there have reported a terrible state of affairs with a very poor sanitation, lack of access to water, leading to very, very many contagious diseases. And I request that this committee takes this as a matter of urgency and visits that facility to get these accounts from these individuals. The other element is violation of juveniles' rights. Throughout the crackdown on NUP supporters, a number of children before the age of 18 have been arrested and or abducted or tortured and tried together with adults. Warakida Royal, a 17-year-old, was arrested from the Constitutional Square and was detained at the Central Police Station in Kampala, and many others. Young people have been subjected to molestation, poor health, denial of education opportunities while being tortured as well. So these are just headings of most of the violations that we've talked about, but there are very, very many other gruesome tales of torture, abductions, and others. I hope the committee will find time to read this, but we've also attached a report made by one of our international lawyers, Bruce Afran, about the electoral process, as well as a witness account from, as I said, lawyer Sasi Marvin about these violations. Our request maybe to give a conclusion, given the huge human rights violations largely undertaken by the state agencies, we think that the 2021 general elections will go down as the most violent elections that witnessed the most number of human rights violations in Uganda's history. The selective enforcement of the COVID-19 regulations and standard operating procedures against NUP and our party president through the proportionate use of force greatly undermine the rule of law and respect for human rights. The heavy deployment, intimidation, arbitrary arrests, and direct involvement of the military in the entire electoral process seriously undermined the electoral process and violated the right to vote, as it were. The brutal crackdown on NUP supporters and members by police and military officers before, during, and after the elections should not go without an investigation, and we are glad this committee is undertaking this investigation. The excessive use of force by security agencies against unarmed citizens greatly subverted the electoral process and human rights of citizens. We condemn in the strongest terms the continued arbitrary arrests, abduction, torture, and illegal detention of NUP members and supporters by security agencies, and we hope that that can be put to an immediate stop. The National Unity Platform further demands for the immediate and unconditional release of all members and supporters languishing in illegal detention facilities across the country. We also demand for the arrest and transparent prosecution of perpetrators of all these human rights violations that we have stated here. And of course, we hope that the victims of these gruesome violations can be compensated. I thank you, Madam Chair.
What really we encounter of the Constitution and our rules, and between Parliament and particularly this committee, probably the public sees a firewall between an eternally criminal state and the general public that needs protection from the criminality of the state, which is deliberate. And whereas this is Parliament, we also know that there are other constitutional commissions, like the Human Rights Commission, that probably could have even been ahead of this committee. But we've had statements from the Human Rights Commission that border on, believing that all is well. We look forward to the report of this commission, whose funds are voted by Parliament on its role in the ongoing violations in the country. I'm also aware that this committee has powers to interact with this commission. Probably would be eager to know what they will tell Parliament about their role and whether they have abdicated their responsibility and are satisfied in what they have done so far, given the statement they have released, Madam Chair, since the elections. We, Madam Chair, have been trying to pursue justice for these people. The SG has mentioned. We definitely are finding lots of problems with the courts. We have resolved as a party, we are going to raise some of these issues with the principal judge over commercialized justice. It's very rare for an NUP activist to get bail that is non-cash. So we are going through all these, and we believe that courts are enjoined to propagate justice, the cause of justice, and we are pursuing all avenues possible to make sure that we return this country to the cause of justice and the rule of law. We're also eager to know whether this committee has interacted with the military and the police to also explain whether they know their responsibility or they are actually they're deliberately violating rights at the behest of individuals, or they actually are aware that what they are doing is unconstitutional and very serious violations for which they will be indicted as individuals. In all, we appreciate the invitation and we are ready to respond to any questions or queries or observations from this.
In the report, the events that were leading to the arrests of the individuals, what exactly were they doing before they would get arrested? I think that is something that we didn't come out very clearly in the report. And then the polling agents who were arrested, who were they, from what polling station, and the declaration forms. Basically, that is what I have. Otherwise, I thank you for being very organized now.
Madam Chair, as the members organized
but also,
respond. Yes.
As you respond, because as we said at the beginning, Uganda is not stopping today. What would you recommend for a better organized election or democratic process in the country?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to add that first of all, we apologize. Otherwise, it has a detailed account of all these violations we have talked about and how they were visited onto our people. The killings, the open air killings, we do not know whether the state was executing its mandate, constitutional mandate, or was carrying out the extrajudicial killings. At least as far as we are aware, there were extrajudicial killings for which we want the state to account. And for the better part, we have observed, we have enumerated, observed, and where feasible, we have given recommendations. Some of them are subject to wide-ranging conversations across the political players. We believe that actually some of these omissions and commissions by the state players were not done in absence of a law regulating otherwise. They were simply blatant violations for which individuals must be sanctioned. And we believe a report of this committee could go a long way in pursuing what ought to have done and what was not done, because they are simply commissions and omissions for which nobody can feign ignorance. Madam Chair, I don't know whether SG has I respond to the chair before members interact with us.
Does this report also show did you note down some of the individuals who were committing these acts?
Sure. The names are therein, but should the committee, in the process of making their report, require extra information, Madam Chair?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To respond on the campaign trail, and talks about some of those events in greater detail, shot or something like that. Others were just found in their rooms at night, broken into, and all those. But like our Deputy President said, if you need any other information, we are ready to avail it, to even give you another more detailed report. And that's the same thing about, we can provide a list of some polling agents and supervisors who were arrested, our people who were arrested, and their forms confiscated from them, and certainly also make further recommendations.
All right, thank you. As you were presenting the report, we were joined by Honorable, I saw him as a member and he sat this side. I didn't know he was part of the delegation. You're most welcome. Yeah. Any reactions to the report? Clarification? Question?
The report. My concern is not far from the main NUP supporters, as you mentioned in your introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And in that booklet. But before that, Madam Chair, I have 3 or 4 concerns where I would require an explanation from the team. One, have we ever reported these human rights violations to Uganda Human Rights Commission? That you have ever reported to Human Rights Commission about all these human rights violations? And if yes, as a committee, we'd like to have a copy of the letters that you wrote or your engagement with Human Rights Commission, because it is a supreme body that oversees human rights in the country. Number 2, we have talked about people being charged because of putting on berets and others in t-shirts that belong to NUP. I don't know whether when you come across such incidences, how does our legal team usually respond to these kind of scenarios? That someone has been found with a beret and has been taken to Machindye or to any other barracks simply because beret were banned. How has the legal team, our legal team, how has it addressed these challenges? 3, most of NUP members that were abducted or kidnapped were in Kitalia. I don't know whether you have ever been to Kitalia specifically to see all those who are in Kitalia as a prison. And if not, what was the reason for the Kitalia management to deny you access to all these people? How I wish that we have a list of those whom we believe are in Kitalia or in other prisons, because we have talked much about Kitalia. I don't know whether in Ruzira and other prisons we don't have people who have gone missing. My second last concern, Madam Chair, according to, because when we raised this issue on the floor of Parliament, in fact I was the one who raised it first, and when the minister presented a list about missing persons, then we got another list from NUP, which was more than 200 people who were missing. I would like to know, from that time up to now, have you ever seen those who were missing now being brought or being dumped somewhere? And between the other list that you brought up to now, have we received new names of those who have been abducted between like within a month? Because, Madam Chair, when we were in Masaka, we got a brief account of all those, and some of them who were released had to come and witness and give us the witness. How I wish that if we also get these people who were dumped somewhere, who were released without any charge against them, so that they can also be our witnesses here as it was in Masaka. And finally, Madam Chair, I don't know whether up to now, as leadership of NUP, given the fact that we are still experiencing these abductions and kidnaps, and indeed, even when they go to police to report about these abductions, nothing is being done. I don't know whether we have ever wrote to human rights bodies, especially international human rights bodies, about all these human rights violations, because that one also can also help our committee to come out with a good report in as far as our findings are concerned. Madam Chair, I raise my case.
Thank the coaching of the language by the Imam, which is in the third person plural. I will invite the SG to make a response to these issues.
Thank you so much, sir. Madam Chair, so these arrests and human rights violations are politically motivated. Right is a human right according to our constitution, and like many Ugandans have said, if the state does not want us to have democracy and elections, let it clearly state so. But otherwise, when you have an election and then you treat your opponents in this manner, it defeats the entire essence of having an election. So we think that NUP has been targeted, and others, it shouldn't really be about only NUP. I know we've seen many other comrades from even other opposition political parties who have been attacked, who have had to go through torture and other brutal treatment. But in this particular election, NUP was a target because of the threat it posed. The other question was about whether or not we've reported to Uganda Human Rights Commission, and the answer is in the affirmative. We've taken several reports to the Uganda Human Rights Commission, including in 2018 after the Arua incidents, where we wrote to them, we complained about the events that took place in 2018. But up to now, the Uganda Human Rights Commission has not taken time to investigate the complaints which we filed then. This very year, on the 4th of January, we complained to the Uganda Human Rights Commission about the arrests of our people, and no step has been taken. On 20th of January, Honorable Kyagulanyi complained to the Uganda Human Rights Commission about the illegal arrest and detention at his home, and nothing took place. Under the law, they are mandated to hold a tribunal and all other mechanisms. But in our case, every time we report to them, they just put our complaints on the shelf. But I also want to add that we also made several reports about all these events that were taking place to the Electoral Commission itself, as a body charged with the responsibility of overseeing elections. We wrote to them so many times, and the more we complained about brutality, the more we complained about unfairness, the more violence we saw, the more brutality we saw on the campaign trail. Maybe also I could now use this opportunity to respond to...
Madam Chair, before he responds, those letters with the EC and then Human Rights Commission, then it will do us good.
Certainly, thank you so much, Honorable, that we wrote about all these issues. I hasten to add that we've indeed, as Honorable Latif mentioned, also reported to other regional and other international bodies about these human rights violations. The nation saw the brutality meted on us when we went to the UN Human Rights Office to make a report, and what we found there was more fire from the military, and journalists were beaten up and other people assaulted. So that has been the situation. But we're going to avail you with copies of the letters that we wrote to the Electoral Commission, to the police itself. We wrote to the IGP complaining several times about his officers, and we made a complaint to the CDF about all these things. So we've been actually making written correspondences about these violations. The other question was about what the legal team of NUP has tried to do and the challenges we've gotten. We've tried, first of all, to access some of these people, and the reason we call them missing people is because we've not been given access to them. Someone is at either Chireka or Makindye or Mbuya or wherever, and even the lawyers are not allowed to see them. As we mentioned here, our team, which is in Chitaria, they were arraigned before a military court. Our lawyers went to the court, and they were just denied access to the premises of the court, and these people were just immediately remanded. And one of the key problems that we've seen, and maybe if you had a visit to Chitaria, these people would tell you, Chigo and other places, they have spent months and months on remand. you know, they go to the military court and they're told you'll come back to court on a certain day in January, but up to now, they've not even had a day before a judge or even before the court, the military court, which we disagree with. They've not been they've not had that chance. So in many cases, we've applied for habeas corpus for these comrades. Courts in some cases have issued habeas corpus orders, and they have also not been honored. And when we supply more information, we're going to give you instances where we've been able to get habeas corpus orders and they've just been ignored. These people have not been brought to court or even given them back to their people. Honorable Sebagala asked if we've been to Chitalia. Yes, we've been able to access our comrades at Chitalia, and they've really narrated to us the accounts that we've been talking about. And although we put more emphasis on Chitalia, I agree that the others, people who are at Chigo, people who are in Luzira, all face similar challenges. I think these are the questions that have been asked me, but
I'd like you to clarify, just from the communication you've made. In this report, people missing, and the witness has just said that been presented, that's why you call them missing persons, or they are those that you know where they are, and these are seriously missing, you don't know where they are. Please clarify.
Madam Chair, 23 persons, and they're properly categorized. If you go through that list, they're categorized. Those in particular cells, we're even including the killed, the abducted.
Yes, I've seen.
Yes, so the categorization is very, very unequivocal. What we actually are saying is that even those that have been eventually released, it's not an official release, they're dumped somewhere, and we are unable to make an account of who has returned and who is still in detention without an official release of this person by the persons who abducted them. So we remain a country in the dark. Justice in the dark, because we cannot say now there are 3 people because somebody dumped them in a swamp in the dead of the night. So we still consider them as missing persons until those who actually abducted them release them to their people, or until they report to our offices. Some of them have been beaten into submission. They're so cowed to even to say anything or even appear anywhere. Some are in hospital and their families are still taking care of them. We are not God to know who has been dumped in the swamp, but we try to really make a trace of our people. There are people in cells in Gulu, in Arua, in Kalisizo, in Masaka. I don't know whether on your Masaka leg you visit the police cells and military detentions in that area. They are full of people abducted in that sub-region, from Zimbabwe, from Rakai, from Masaka. So there are so many people unaccounted for. That's why when I presented that report to Parliament, the minister promised to come back and clarify on that list those other people he said as being somewhere in some of their other agencies that we do not know. He's never returned since, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, one of our members wants to say something.
Thank you so much to the human rights abuses we are complaining about. Gire, who was killed at Wandegea police station. His case was that his offense was that he was putting on raid. He had gone to police to report loss of his motorcycle at the time when the demonstrations started. When the police had their demonstrations in town, they directed him to enter police cells. On his station, he was killed at the police post and was buried in my constituency in Butambala. So the events that happened before these incidents are just very funny. And I would also request the committee to interest itself into matters of Chitalia. Probably would go and interface with the prisoners. They sleep back to back, person to person, which is so inhuman. There are too many into their isolation center, the so-called isolation center, and they're all supposed to sleep in that place. So they are piled, literally piled one after another. One faces the foot of the other and then faces this other end. The situation is horrible. We would recommend that you go and speak to the prisoners so that they narrate the situations.
Kalwanga.
Chair. Madam Chair, Honorable, but the case in point needs you as the chair to take an extra mile and find out what is on ground with their CIDs. Some of these guys are covering these cases. The case in point is me, myself, on the D day. I was almost killed by those guys, the UPDF guys. And they kept on asking whether I was the charms they were looking for. I was lucky enough that by the time they reached at my vehicle, they didn't know the person they were going to kill. So we need, I don't know whether you can do it as a committee. I don't know how you're going to handle it, but take your interest in seeing those CID guys. They are covering a lot about what is going on with NUP cases.
And the CGF. So if we had the details, when they killed, was he shot? And who shot him? How did they kill him?
Madam Sendagire was shot at Wandagea police station. Who shot, I don't know. It is certainly one of the police officers. They can tell you who shot, but Ibrahim Sendagire was shot on the 18th of November at Wandagea police station. He had gone to report loss of his motorcycle. He was ordered to enter cells. On his station, he was shot in cold blood.
I will chip in a bit to appreciate this committee's role of traversing the country. I know you were arrested, but a number of these have mysteriously disappeared. Many of them seeking refuge in the neighboring Kenya. They are in exile, literally. That question which was raised by the Honorable Nanyondo, that why target NUP supporters? These were mere supporters, ardent supporters of National Unity Platform and the flag bearer, the presidential flag bearer. I think the motive is to create fear, and the powers that be indeed have succeeded in creating that fear. So as you delve into compiling recommendations, one of them should be, honestly, what the Constitution stipulates: equal enjoyment of equal protection by the law is lacking in every respect here in Uganda. Because even when they are detained, why we are recommending that members should go take interest in going to visiting Kitalia. The detainees there are living in deplorable conditions. Some are even, those who were released recently may not survive. They are ailing, taking treatment, all right, but if you see them, we just trust God that they may survive. Thank you.
Definitely not very easy to ask us. We all saw what was happening, but Ted, the status quo. And if we could access one of those people who has either been dumped somewhere or has come out of jail for purposes of taking their testimony, even before we go to jail. Because I know that we try to go to, even as a committee, to safe houses at some point and we're denied. So if we can access these who have gone through that ordeal and they have the strength to speak to the committee, I think it would give us a snapshot into what actually is happening in there. So if you have any of them who can, who is able to meet the committee, I wish you had come with one or two, but even then probably the chair can give us, allow us to have a few minutes to interact with them as we are still meeting these other, we are yet to meet the police, UPDF and other entities. So maybe along the way, we could have an account of one or two of those that have gone through that experience. I think it would help us. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for the energy. I think it is, yeah, but it should not be the end. We should not be deterred, and I like the determination. Like Chair has said, the organization is impressive, and we find ourselves more or less in the same situation. But as a committee right now, we have to do what we have to do, and just encourage you that let nothing deter you, because the future is in our hands. It is not in the hands of anybody else, it is in our hands. And we must enjoy Uganda by hook or crook. Yes, we must enjoy Uganda. So thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, that was committed when they're in jail. Because they were telling them that they are being charged for a crime. And yet, when you look at the dates that those people were being charged, they were already in the prison. They were already at Kitalia. So I wanted him to throw more light that if the charges against these people who are in Kitalia was committed prior or before the arrest. Because when we say that the charges were committed when they are in prison, it doesn't ring a bell. It doesn't ring a bell, Madam Chair, and I would like to the Secretary General to throw more light, because being charged for a crime when you are outside Uganda and then they say you committed this crime, and when you look at the passport, you were abroad. So I would like him to clarify, to throw more light on this.
Then SG will come in.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And so I invite this committee to have that at the back of our minds. They're real. They're not just statistics. We can look at a booklet like that and see 60 people dead, hundreds in jail. These are real people with families, loved ones. I've been a victim myself, so I know it's real, you know. I was beaten badly on nomination day of Honorable Kyagulanyi, and to date I bear scars of this brutality. So they are real. Number two, Madam Chair, as we interrogate these issues, and I'm glad you're going to interact with the leadership of police and the army, there are concerns, and some we have raised in that report. One of the things that bothers us is the manner of arrest. We're not saying any of us is above the law. No one is. But if you think that Senyonyi has committed an offense, what is prescribed in the law in regards to how you arrest him, how you deal with him? Because what happens, people are abducted in the middle of the night by these notorious cars now known as drones. Sometimes they'll break their doors and the family members ask, where are you taking this person? And nothing is said. They are in, casual wear. They're not in military attire or anything of the sort. They're wielding guns. And they do whatever they want to do in a manner so wanton. Madam Chair, if we don't take these matters
do they identify themselves?
No, they don't. They don't. They have guns and, and that's why we categorize them as missing persons. Because, you see, if they're taken by police, then we know they're in police detention. They're not exactly missing. And that kind of situation. Madam Chair, I was watching news yesterday, and I saw one of those drone cars was burnt by people yesterday, somewhere in Bukoto. That's in an area that I'm going to represent in Parliament as MP Lake Nakawa West. That worried me, because people are saying if the state cannot protect us, if the law cannot protect us, then we've got to fight for our lives. Because if these drones are operating illegally, they are numberless, some of them, some have ordinary plates. The people therein don't have any identification, they wield guns. So if you come at me, the Constitution actually avails me the opportunity to defend myself. If you come to my house, you're wielding a gun, people have pangas and other weaponry they use to protect themselves. So what's going to happen? There's going to be a clash. Is that what we want for this country? That now people are going to begin banning these drones like they did yesterday. And now probably they'll begin to go after the occupants of these drone cars. I don't think that's what we want for this country. And so we need to critically, look at these manners. I mean, the manner of especially arrest and how the law gets to be followed. The other issue that is of concern, Madam Chair and members, And some of these we've interacted, with these situations along the way. So recently, we did hold a peaceful protest, again demanding for the release of these people. We were taken to CPS. Personally, I was taken into, it's like a dungeon where many of these people were held. I had an interaction with a number of these people. Each of them was quickly giving me an account of their situation. Some have been at CPS, in that dungeon they call a cell, for weeks. They've not been produced before a court of law. They have not been charged. They are being held in that place. Madam Chair, this country has laws. And so there's the 48-hour rule, which we must respect. And I'm glad you're going to interact again with people in security, because sometimes they'll say, no, let's throw it out. Everybody needs to know that you want the law to operate because tomorrow you might need it. I'll cite an example of General Kale Kaihura. He was police chief. He's one of those who are saying we should abandon this 48-hour rule for some, accused persons. But you see, after he left police and he was at Karuhanga, before the general court martial pleading, please release this man, he's been held beyond 48 hours. And so it's important that this gets to happen. Second, inmates in the prisons across the country. According to the Ministry of 1,000 inmates, in fact, the exact number, 55,229. 49% of these have been on remand, some for years. And I've also seen this because every once in a while we go to Chitalia to interact with our colleagues, visit them and so on, and they tell us the situation there because they interact with inmates. Some have been on remand, you will not believe it, but there are people who have been on remand for 5 years, for 7, even for 10. Madam Chair. What are laws there for then? What's a committee like this one in place for? Because that's a violation of somebody's human right. They have not been found guilty, they have not been sentenced, but they're languishing in jail for years. I think that this committee needs to interest itself in matters such as those, that we get to broaden it, that is beyond just NUP. It's about our country, because some have been there for 5 years. That was before NUP came into being, at least as it is. We should focus on these people. Lastly, Madam Chair, incidentally, people have a lot of hope in Parliament. I see that now as an MP elect. For some reason, people think I'm going to perform miracles. They have a lot of hope. There are those that will disdain Parliament for many reasons, and they have their reasons. Maybe some are valid, but people have hope in Parliament. People learned that we are coming to this committee today about these matters. And a number of them were excited. My prayer is that we don't dash the hopes of these people. I know that this committee has got challenges. Honorable was, Adam rating about how this very committee we saw. You went and you were trying to access safe houses, and they said you cannot access them, even as MPs, even as a committee on human rights. That bothered me. So I don't know, and maybe it's also a question that I'll throw back at you, or food for thought. The expectation that Ugandans have in processes such as this, because their loved ones are missing, their loved ones have gone back home with nails, fingernails plucked out. There's a young man whose tongue was cut because they were asking him to speak. Tell us Bobi Wine's plans. And I thought, but this young man, what does he know about Bobi Wine's plans? Come for Senyonyi, at least he sits with Bobi Wine and they plan. And anyway, our plans are open. We want to change leadership within the law. But that's important for this committee. People need to feel that this committee can do something about these matters and that some action can be taken, as opposed to we come here, interact with you, there's media and so on, you put together a report and then it piles dust somewhere and it's business as usual. People want to see different. I hope we can promise them that. Thank you.
I wanted to also make, before I respond to the question on the Constitution, I do not know if any of the committee members believes that the specific clause I'm talking about is one regarding the right to peaceful assembly. When every time we've tried to organize a peaceful demonstration, how can we say that citizens have the right to peacefully demonstrate unarmed, but yet every time we try to do that, we are met with so much force? On the other question specifically, I was asked about, Honorable Latif sought clarity on what I talked about. It is true, Madam Chair, that our team, the entire campaign team of Honorable Kyagulanyi, was arrested on 30th of December in Kalangala. The charge sheet, a copy of which I have here on phone and we're going to provide you a copy with, says that they committed the offense on 3rd of January. So that is when they were found with bullets at Kavule in Makerere. On 3rd, they were already in prison. They were actually already in the custody of the military. So one wonders how they committed this offense when they were under. I mean, it's laughable to say the least. First of all, 49 people being said to have been found with 4 bullets and 1 magazine. Does not any make logical sense. But Madam Chair, for that, these people have been at Chitala now for close to 3 months, going through incredible suffering. Their families are shattered. Some of them have lost relatives and loved ones while there. Some of these are young people who have been taking care of their parents, of their, other people, but they are there simply for an offense which does not make any sense at all. And the courts have really not been willing, because there seems to be a sense of fear, even with the regular courts, the High Court and others, to touch these matters. We try to apply for bail in the High Court, and the High Court wrote back to us saying, no, this is a matter which is before a military court, we cannot intervene, despite having previous precedents where the High Court has granted bail to people who are being tried by the military court. And that is why I think this committee needs to interact not just with the CDF, but even the chairperson of the court martial and other such people to get clarity on these issues.
Can I just ask something? What reason would you give as to why they are in the military court? Do you think they are rightly in the military court?
Because the military court ideally should be trying 119H of the EPDF Act, which places civilians, which was challenged many years ago before the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court is yet to pronounce itself on the matter. But what the trend that we've seen, as you know, Madam Chair and members, the civilian courts have tended to grant bail because most of these offenses are always baseless. So because the courts, the civil courts normally give bail, the approach now changed. You are taken to the court martial, which court martial is not independent, which court martial is convened under the EPDF Act by the president of this country, and therefore not independent. So you find that most of the people who go through that channel cannot be able to access bail until orders come in to say let them be given bail.
Would assemble more than this room, Madam Chair. We would be eager to assemble some of the victims to give verbatim their testimonies. And there are so many. If you did ask for the victims, say from Masaka, shooting victims, on polling day, they shot more than 3 persons in Masaka. We've been treating them. Some of them have undergone surgery. Very horrifying testimonies you would get, and they would be glad to be given a chance. Because of the structured and linear nature of parliamentary committee meetings, we did not think that it was appropriate to come with them. But if given a chance, we would more than gladly make them available, Madam Chair.
Former State Minister for Internal Affairs is already here. Maybe.
Parliament for Koboko County and a member. So Latif, you actually know how to order.
You're welcome, Honorable. Thank you for coming.
No, I just want to freely demonstrate and assemble. And that is given in the Constitution and the Police Act. What, however, must be pointed out also, these rights go with the responsibilities and obligations. While you exercise these rights, you must also observe the rights of others. If you infringe on them, then you also be breaking the law. And I think one of the major issues we found is that in many instances, in groups, societies exercising their rights to freely assemble, they also interfered with the rights of others. Going to public places like markets, like streets, like roads, when other users are also there who need to be protected. So the law empowers the law enforcement agencies, especially the police,
to make sure that the rights of others are also protected. This is not to say that people have been stopped unfairly from a freely assembly. The police and security agencies sometimes have gone overboard, which I do not support personally, and which this committee should condemn. Secondly, when Masaka, this committee was in Masaka, we had testimonies from witnesses, some who were badly beaten, and we're extremely sorry about that this happened. But we have radicalized our politics so much that we need to step back and really reflect on it. How do we organize our politics without so much violence on either side, on both sides? This committee has an obligation to reflect deeply how in future we should conduct our elections, respecting rights of others, respecting the citizens, so that nobody is harmed in this competition for politics. Politics should not be the end all and be all here. It's an event which passes every 5 years, and I think we are now mature enough to organize politics in a very organized manner. So, Madam, my appeal is that let's reflect on how we do politics within the bounds of the law. I would like to know, for example, NUP swept the whole of Central Region, despite all these charges of restrictions, arrests, and all this. How is that possible? We have to reflect on that. So, for me, as a committee, let's see how we can recommend to government, to parliament, how best to organize our politics in the future. But at the same time, really recommend very strongly those whose rights were infringed must be brought to account. The law provides for it, and for me, I will support that fully. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we want to appreciate.
Madam Chair, before we come.
For the statistics is to get the real evidence, because as we do this inquiry, we report to recommendations to government, and government is supposed to account. So Parliament holds government accountable for these violations or for any acts that are not right. And when we make the recommendations, we don't just sit and wait for government to act. If it doesn't act, the minister is supposed to come back with a report, and we continue inquiring. So even then, some people can get justice out of this, because if there is real evidence, like Shaz said, somebody was shot, in the report, we will interest ourselves, Parliament will interest itself, and the minister will have to answer. They can do further investigations and find out who were the police officers at that station at that time. So this work is not just for the cameras that we enjoy sitting here, but we are making a contribution in the transformation of this country. So then the other that I wanted to comment about is the Human Rights Commission. We have invited Human Rights Commission, but so far the information I have, it seems we may or may not interact, because they've declined. They said under the law they are not yet comprised since the death of Honorable Medi Kagwa. So they are not supposed to appear, and they wrote a letter to the Speaker. So I'm thinking of engaging them a little, but officially, that is what we have. They are not, they've declined to come and appear before the committee because they are not comprised as they are supposed to be.
Can I ask, Madam Chair, can I kindly ask you, in regard to their decline, whether they will decline the budget from Parliament for their...
All those are the questions that are also running in my mind. Of course, I can't answer on their behalf. But that is what we have so far. We are shocked that they've been doing work and then they cannot, yeah. We will continue engaging them to see that maybe we can get something different. But basically that is what we have so far. Then lastly from me, I don't want this to go unnoticed because it has been a concern of a number of people. They can say maybe the chair is so biased that she only listened to the violations. There are concerns actually, just to broaden on the submission of Honorable Baba. We were in Masaka. We actually got witnesses from NUP whose rights were violated. But the question of having them here, maybe we'll have an indoor, because every day we increase on the list of witnesses, but you're also aware that Parliament is about to end. So in instances where we can get information in another way, we will see, we will discuss in-house, because it will be very unfortunate for us to engage in all this work that we've been doing, and then at the end of it all we can't present the report, and the Parliament goes with its work. We can't carry it on to another. So we really need to work within the time limit so that we present the report. Yes, what I was commenting about, we got testimonies from NRM people and other elders who said that this time the politics was different. There was, it seems, there was a lot of incitement of the young people, that they did not go through the normal politics they've been going through. They said they've been living with DP, but everyone would canvass their votes, and then they come together and eat and do everything. This time around, the NUP people, they noted that the young people would say, we shall slaughter you, we shall do this. They intimidated them a lot. So, yes, and they told the women, you are the ones who want to vote NRM. This time you will see us. Can you comment about that? As leadership of NUP, there was a lot of intimidation, and the undressing of people. People were fearing to put on yellow because they will be undressed, they will be beaten up by the NUP supporters. Can you make a comment?
Madam Chair, in Masaka, they told us Bugum. I don't know Uganda very well. But you do.
They said there was a lot of heat. Yeah. Please,
Thank you.
I don't want you to go without making a comment.
I would like to appreciate the observations, and before responding to yours in part, attempt to humbly respond to the Honorable Baba, a senior citizen and an elder, for his observations that on record, that one, this time around, our politics was so radicalized, and that when there are demands for space, there's need for space for others. The question of the day he didn't answer was whether those who stop others from exercising their rights, what law are they enforcing in stopping me from holding an assembly? What law are they really enforcing in stopping me, say, from demonstrating in a playground? What law are they implementing in shooting people on polling day? Because people have a lot of bugumo, so you shoot at them. So what law are they implementing in doing that? Probably he will answer. Secondly, he did state that NUP swept the central region. So was he asking for an apology, for demanding for an apology that NUP swept central region? Therefore, we must stomach the violations having swept the central region. So are you unleashing punishment for the victory that we registered in the Central Region? Probably he'll give us an answer whether the regime is answering back by punishing the sweeping. Probably he meant something else. Being an elder, they sometimes speak in riddles. Madam Chair, to answer you on the question of NRM people complaining that this time round they were used to competing with the DP calmly. I don't know whether the NRM people want to choose their competitors, and therefore they had chosen DP as their competitor, and therefore NUP interfered.
I don't want us to go into a lot of
no, I'm going to answer.
But
I'm going to answer.
Yes, honestly, because it the question actually, they are choosing competitors, but they are saying the kind of politics that was there, not the competitors, but that
Madam
hit
Chair,
and
Madam
the intimidation.
Chair, did you get evidence of anybody who was unaddressed in massacre? And I will go and apologize personally. Did you get evidence of any NRM supporter who was beaten so that I can move as Deputy President and apologize to that person?
The undressing was not in massacre. The undressing, I gave a general comment as a concern nationally. But in massacre specifically, they said there was a lot of intimidation. They actually said, an elder said, members you remember, that young man who is testifying before you, recently he even lost a father, but people could not go to attend the burial of the father because of the hostility that he was exhibiting during the campaigns. So people are not hurt physically, but they are hurt in different ways.
Okay,
That
Madam
is why
Chair, I get the
that
background and I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and this is where, as leaders, we have that duty to strike a delicate balance between terror and mere intimidation or fear. What is not in doubt is and was and remains that massacre is a bastion of NUP, and the support is very civil, extremely civil. Not even a stone was thrown at anyone. I did not make personal testimonies over the violations occasioned onto me and onto my family in massacre, because as a leader, I stood above the pettiness of the military and the police, and I thought I could instead frank the interests of my humble citizens who were really intimidated, beaten, shot at. If there are citizens who actually are complaining about the fact that the way NUP did did intimidate them, I want to apologize. We did not intend to intimidate them. We only intended, in a civil manner, to assert our support in the region. The reason why nobody can testify to being beaten, we only intended to use civil means to exert our presence in the region, and it's not in our methods of work to use violence to get support. So, Madam Chair, I believe these were complaints to balance the terror. Those who are raising, they were trying to balance the terror, the physical terror on our supporters. But we take them in good faith, and in the future, we shall still tell our people, our supporters, remain firm but civil, because that's what we chose to be. We are a civil entity. We are not a paramilitary group. We are not armed, and we do not intend to be armed. So, but we take it in good faith, those complaints from the citizens.
Surely, representing the president of NUP, I wanted to bring that issue out very clearly because people were concerned countrywide. During there are people who testified that during the roadblocks, and they were people abandoned their vehicles in Seta, where, and they were raiding people of money. Yeah.
Just for the record, that we do not really take records for granted. What were the identity of these our supporters? Were they bearing NUP paraphernalia? What kind of identity? Because we know the history of this country and this government of using their opponents' attire. Remember, the regime raided our offices and took away t-shirts, caps, and everything. Were these complainants able to really decipher what the regime supporters and especially the paramilitary groups they have been recruiting over time were doing in the countryside? Were you able to tell that in so many cases, some of these paramilitaries were given NUP paraphernalia to turn around and terrorize citizens, and say it is NUP doing so? Probably when you invite the police, let them show you where they put NUP t-shirts and caps, if they have them in their custody. They took them in thousands from our stores. Probably you could ask them to visit them where they are. And probably you can see the balance between what they use them for and the nature of complaints. But in a nutshell, we apologize to any citizen who in any way felt hurt and felt that he was being hurt by our supporters. We are a very civil entity. We've never prided in being, what we are claimed to be. We are very civil. We are not armed. But we know people who are priding themselves in a shooting. I had the head of state say that he unleashed commandos who shot and killed NUP supporters. So we are not armed, and therefore we distance ourselves from any riotous acts. We are a very civil entity, and we shall remain so, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
General human rights situation during the 2021 elections. I feel that we are not sufficiently addressing the elephant in the room, being specifically targeted by security institutions. They can take our memory back to around 20th December 2020. The president of this country, Duhaga Primary School in Hoima, swore that he said, quote unquote, he promised to annihilate us. He made so many comments which are captured on camera, and they can be found on YouTube. It's not surprising that 10 days after those comments, after General Museveni's promise to wipe out the entire campaign, to wipe out what we call Kyagulanyi's group, the entire campaign team of Honorable Kyagulanyi was arrested on 30th December in the middle of a forest on Kalangala Islands. They waited for these comrades to travel. In an ambush of heavily armed counter-terrorism officers, Major Matthias Mpuga here, who were set free later in the day. The rest of them, as we've already heard, were taken to prison. On 7th January 2021, after taking some days off the campaign trail in light of the arrest, Honorable Kyagulanyi got a new campaign team of over 20 people. These people, as they were traveling to another campaign meeting, like you've already heard, they were stopped in the mid as they are traveling to another campaign meeting, and they were sent to prison. What's background is when you invite these security chiefs to come here and interact with you, you are going to hear them saying that they opted out all the brutality that they did against us because we were violating COVID-19. Kalangala comprised it of over 100 people. The next team they arrest on 6th January was on some of the occasions when we travel with Honorable Kyagulanyi towards campaign meetings, sometimes traveling at speeds of 100 kilometers per hour. And these are the same people who will come here traveling to Mbarara, Ontungamo district. We reached a certain town at 7:30 p.m. in the night. It's dark, there's thick traffic jam. Police out of the blue starts firing tear gas into the vehicles. It sends people panicking, some are falling into the cars, and so many other things. The brutality that we faced on the campaign trail, which has also now continued even after, cannot be justified under any circumstances, and it cannot be excused because the chief of defense forces, the commander-in-chief of these people, who also doubles as the president of Uganda, said it on record that he would do everything in his power to wipe out the Kyagulanyi group. So as we are here discussing why these violations are going on, etc., let us not forget that whatever is happening is the demonstrated will being put to action of General Museveni to do. Thank you.
All right. I think with that we come to, it's not something ordinary. Yeah, we'll thank him for presenting himself to Ugandans. And we will use every information that you have given us. We'll put it to good use to see that we present a report to Parliament that can cause positive impact to the Ugandans as they feel we should. Thank you so much. Members, please, I request that we don't go very far because General Muntu is within the premises.
Are you going with Google?
Abantu abakosebwa tubibawadde balina era beetaaga okulabako ensonga bazifunye tusuubira akakiiko kano okutwala obuvunaanyizibwa bwako nga bukulu eri eggwanga lino. Mukimanyi bulungi nti akakiiko k'eddembe ly'obuntu ko kaagula bulangiti nga yawuulu keebase. Akakiiko ka Parliament kano tukasabye kakole gonna okukola omulimu gwa Human Rights Commission n'okukola ogwako ekirungi bonna buteekebwamu mateeka ga ggwanga lino. Bannaffe balinga bakyebase aba Human Rights Commission, waakiri bano aba komiti ya Parliament babeeko kye bakola ekyenkizo okuyamba eggwanga obutatambulira mu nzikiza. Ensonga ezivuddeyo nabo bennyini bakakasa nti betwogeddeko si lugambo, nabo baabiraba gye baatambulira ne boogera n'abantu abatuusibwako ebisago. Wabaddewo okwekwasa nti n'abantu baali batwemulugunyaako naffe twakozesa amaanyi mangi. Ffe amaanyi ge tulina gaali ga mirundi ebiri oba esatu, ag'amagezi n'ag'okwewaayo. Ago bwe gabanga ddala ge maanyi ge baali beemulugunyaako, abaali beemulugunya ndowooza si beesimbu. Wabeerawo omuntu yenna agamba nti aba NUP neera abasongako olunwe nti gundi yankola kino, tumulinze bwe kinaabaawo tujja mugamba nti tusonyiwe bw'abanga gy'ali. Naye ffe abatuusaako ebikolero ku bantu baffe tubamanyi nti gundi yakola kino, gundi yakola kino. Abaakuba abantu amasasi tubamanyi, abadde bakwata abantu mu ngeri y'ekyono naye tubamanyi. So n'olwekyo ffe nga NUP tetulina kikolero kye twakola muntu yenna twemulugunya, tulinze twagala bwenkanya eri abantu baffe abali mu makomera, abatwala mu kkooti z'amagye nga si bannamagye, abaasibwako emisango nga baagiza bali mu kkomera. Tulinze obwenkanya, tusabye akakiiko kayingire mu nsonga zino, kakyalire amakomera, kagende mu ddukulu bwa poliisi kalabe abantu abamazeeyo emyezi n'emyezi nga bavundira eyo. Parliament minisita asaba sabbiiti 2 omwezi guweze, ndowooza abala mu base 10 minisita ono. Naye tumanyi nti akikola mu bugenderevu ekyobutaagala kuvaayo kukkiriza nti abantu bano baakwatibwa. Kyova olaba be batta babasuula mu bitoogo, babasuula mu nkande, babasuula mu nsuku. Njala bategeeza nti tekijjaawo nti minisita era gw'ovunaanyizibwa ku kutyobola eddembe ly'obuntu. Naye munaabasuula mu miti waggulu oba mu nkande, gw'ovunaanyizibwa. Abantu bano tubamanyi, abavuddeyo abamu tutanze okufuna rekodizi zaabwe, abatuusibwako ebisago batya n'okwogera bangi, naye nga ffe omulimu gwaffe kutwala rekodi zino zibeerewo ensi eri tulamula.
Baalaba ku madroni ago amamotoka ago ne bakwatako omuntu omu, actually kati baawera 2 babakwate. Tetumanyi abakwatibwa baabatwalawa, naye abasinga baddukire Kenya bali mu exile. So embeera eno ebaddewo mbi nnyo. Kati tubadde mu kakiiko ak'eddembe ly'obuntu tukawadde statement era ne listi y'abantu abo abaabuzibwawo n'abo abadduka bali mu ensi ez'ebweru ng'e Kenya. Naye ekiri ekyamaanyi nti amakomera gonna mu Uganda akatembe eddembe lino komiti eno ey'eddembe ly'obuntu yandikyalidde amakomera ako n'eraba bantu ki abaasibibwa nga ku buwagizi bwa National Unity Platform NUP n'embeera gye balimu ng'eyo ekitalya bagimanye era bayambe abantu abo kubeera nti babata.
Kyagulanyi, the Uganda Younger Democrats. So we were directed to do this inquiry so that we take stock of the violations that marred the 2021. Please feel free to talk to us. And going through it, congratulate you upon the new party, Renew Party, coming for honoring our invitation. Many people think it is for no use. Thank you for coming. We are sorry about
lethal force and the loss of lives. I would like to believe that that has already been mentioned. The Electoral Commission, in terms of managing the electoral processes, was literally marginalized. Because when it came like the programs of the presidential candidates moving in different parts of the country, the security forces literally took over that role. They're the ones who determined where you would have a meeting. That was never supposed to be their mandate. It should never be the mandate of the security services. The Electoral Commission that would, in that case, with the candidates, manage that. That was never the case. And there are many incidents in regard to that, how the security forces, the police, would determine. You go to a place and they say, you'd be in this location, even within the town itself, and not the other location. That created a lot of problems. Elections themselves, many security officers, not in uniform, many senior officers who went to different parts of the country and literally managed the elections, many parts of the country. So rampant. Police as well as, unfortunately, the military itself. Cases where there would be no presidential election. People would get to a polling station and they would say the presidential election is done, so you only vote for the member of parliament. Many incidents in many parts. Quite a number of districts where agents would be run off. Mostly I am aware of the western part of the country where agents of the opposition would be run off polling stations and they would just be voting by people who support the regime. Those incidents were rampant in Isinjiro, in Tungamo, in Chehura, in Kazo. Much as you recognize that all that happened, to me, it's not something that is new, because progressively in the elections that we've had, every subsequent election has been worse than the one before. You look at 2006, worse than 2001, 2011, worse than 2006, 2016, worse than 2011, 2021, worse than 2016. So that's the direction we keep moving. So the question in our minds is if, like in this particular case, for this Human Rights Committee and any other committee of parliament or other stakeholders in the process of trying to put this country back on track, will there be actions to ensure that we break out of that vicious cycle? Because if we don't, then we'll keep seeing the same things happening, different in magnitude, maybe different areas, different actors, but same actions. Because all that is rooted in impunity. Because we have a regime which thinks that the moment you have control over the state security apparatus and you have got control over the state resources, then you can't do anything and you'll go out with it. Some of the root causes to what has led to that state of impunity, the 7th Parliament and the 10th Parliament, right now they can easily be debated. There are many who say, no, that was the right thing to do. That can only be sustained if eventually where we're heading, we get a stable, smooth transition of power. Then hopefully the government that will get in can move the country back on track. Because if that doesn't happen, and we end up in a crisis, that's when I think this debate would cease in terms of what 7th Parliament did and what the 10th Parliament did. Or should we end up in a crisis as a country, then the 7th and 10th Parliament would need to recognize that they participated in the cause of such a crisis. Why do I say so? Because when the Constitution was being written, safeguards were put in. The thinking amongst many of us who were in that Constituent Assembly was that we cannot depend on the goodwill of any man or woman. However good any man or woman is, we can't depend on the goodwill of a human being. We must depend on the strength of institutions. And good governance principles being adhered to, and all governance processes built on that. That's where we put their term limits, which was a very, very critical component for any country that wants to ensure that it builds strong institutions. But it was lifted, and subsequently, any form of impunity that is practiced is rooted in that, because once a people seem to think that you can only depend on an individual, that is contention against the building a stability of a country based on strong institutions. And we've seen the practice in many African countries. It's not that all the presidents they have had are the best, no. But that they know that this president is going to serve, whether it's good or bad, one term, finish, second term, they go, another one comes in. The institutions keep on growing, getting stronger. And the principles, for example, the principle of separation of powers, that there is the legislative assembly or the parliament, that there is the executive, that there is the judiciary, keeps on getting strengthened. But the moment actions are done as if there is one man, one woman who is the only one who can run a country, then the measures that are taken or the actions that are taken in that regard undermine the very principle of strengthening institutions and establishing functioning processes. Our hope, therefore, is that besides the measures that you would have to take in your recommendations to see how you can rectify the incidents where individuals suffered, those who are killed, those who are arrested, even those who are still being arrested up to now, because it's a continuation. Beyond the election itself, as you must be aware, when you've been going in many parts of the country, you've been getting information about the arrests which are still going on. As you give recommendations how to rectify incidents that affect individuals, our view is that focus a lot more on what measures are going to be taken for this country to break out of that vicious cycle. Because short of doing that, my own view, my own personal opinion is that we haven't seen the worst yet. Because the sense of impunity is deep. The institutions of governance have been weakened and compromised. I mean, you can see, and the new culture has developed in our country too. Fear is what is running this country. Those who are in power are fearful of losing it. The people who would want to see good governance are fearful of taking a stand to challenge that. So there's fear on both sides. That's one. Two, the sense of survival. All those officers and men who are participating in this electoral process, it's not that they didn't know that what they were doing was wrong. They knew, because in some cases they would do it even in hiding. If someone, they knew it's wrong. But the driving motive behind when you investigate, some want promotions. Some fear reprisals if they don't carry out wrong orders that they are given. for the survival of the regime. The Electoral Commission, I don't know whether it was willful ineptitude, because those people are educated, many of them. And they've got the law on their side. They've got security of tenure. But they want to survive. And that's the biggest problem that we face as a country. So our hope is that in whatever measures you take, whatever recommendations you take, is what do you do to change that culture, to ensure that people who recognize that as long as the sense of impunity prevails, as it is now, and there's no turnaround, that we're heading towards a crisis. That's the ultimate solution. That's why we're looking towards ourselves as Alliance for National Transformation. It's not that we are disregarding the incidents which happened. We will be able to furnish you with the information at a later point in regard to the incidents. But those incidents will pair or become, it will be just in the face of what could happen down the road if the country doesn't change direction. That's where we're at now. We respect institutions. Actually, that's one reason why we came. Because if we were just to, look at the situation as it is now, we could easily have said, you know what, let's not go to this committee, it will waste our time. But we deeply believe in the strength of the institutions. And that's why we come, because of the respect that we have for the institution of parliament. Irregardless, human beings are transitory. One day, one person is there, be running as, running a district or running whatever institution they run. Tomorrow they are not there. So what happened? We just have had a sad experience recently, just a few weeks ago. We lost a president within this region, President Magufuli. But you can see that they have developed the culture of institutions and managing processes, governance processes. They had a smooth transition. Vice President Tuko came sworn in as the president. They buried the late President Magufuli. Tanzania is running shy from that. Right now here, institutions have been weak. We have 45 million people. 25 years down the road, we are going to become 100 million people. We cannot afford to keep in the mind, which seems to be so pervasive in this country, that you can depend on any human being. That's the most deceptive way of looking at any society. So our hope is that Parliament will do its own reflection, looking at the number of terms that we've gone through, the mistakes that have been made along the way. 11th Parliament is coming in, 10th is ending. So our hope is that this experience can be transferred to the 11th Parliament, since it's going to have a longer period, and start carrying out rectification measures simply for the stability of our country and for the good of our people. If they